everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Love Isn't Enough. I'm so excited to have our friends Alex Terranova and Evin Rose here, which I know is going to be such a fun conversation. And they are going to be talking about their relationship journey and so many of the lessons that they learned in between. And I'm sure some fun stories sprinkled as well. So, Alex, Evin, thank you guys so much for being here.
Thanks for having us. So excited to get to hang with you and call it a podcast.
Yes, exactly. And have others just get a benefit from a fun conversation that the four of us get to have with one another.
Yeah.
So, please introduce yourself and really we were talking just before we started hitting record of, in our introduction, but I want to add I think you guys are going to introduce each other to make it a little bit spicier and fun. But I really want to, in that introduction, invite you to consider what is the spark that shifted in your life to get you to be where you are in the work that you're doing? Because, we're all in this work of relationships, and it's such an easy answer. I'm interested in relationships, or I had my own journey, but what's the little extra spicy piece that someone might not know if they just read your bio or looked at your website?
Yeah. I love that.
You want me to go first?
You go first.
Cool. So this is Evin Rose, Terranova. My wife, Evin is a mother to her cat Tucker, to our cat Tucker, who she is obsessed with. She's also an adopted mother to my dog and now our dog Callie. I don't know if you can see on camera sitting in her lap. Evan is obsessed with long, long mornings of sleeping in, cuddling with the animals, long baths, long Epsom salt baths, a really good read, a really good like romantic read on her Kindle.
True.
She loves a good like Love is Blind, date like romance or dating show on Netflix. She's obsessed with community and musical theater and her friendships, especially her women's friendships. And I think all of those things together really speak to who she is, which is love and empathy and connection and community. And to me, that she's rolled all those things into all of her careers. So she's been for the last 8 years a dating and love coach for women. And as I like to tell other people, if you go to her website, you'll never see a website that has more people that have been married by someone. Like you work with Evin and you get married whether you like it or not. Um, and she's launching a new business, an adult theater camp for those theater kids who had to give it up and people who wanted to do it more and are missing it, or people who just want to find a way to express themselves and don't know how, which I think is not necessarily something for me, but one of the coolest ideas I've heard. Yeah, and I don't know if I don't know how, like, based on what you asked, Jory, that question at the beginning to preface it, I think Evan is really special because of the biggest tragedy in her life. I think like her losing her dad as an 8 or 9 year old, which is like the saddest thing, had her luckily she had a mom who really knew how to get her like the care, the attention, the therapy, all the things. And it had her be, if we were a video game and you had to put scales on like emotional intelligence, intelligent, although her emotional IQ is like 100 out of 100. And I think that only happens because of what she had to endure that made her so strong in that, and that lets her help people. I think in other ways that other people can't see. She's able to see them and help them.
I love that introduction you gave of her, Alex. And I have to say, when we met, because we met in person and Alex and John have been connected for some time, Evan and I just had so much in common. And I just, and it can relate to that father piece. And there was various things. So I saw that in you, what you just described, Alex, from the get-go. So I will validate, not being married to you, that I saw this right off the bat.
Wow, thank you. I'm glad we're recording this. I need to like listen to that whole thing back every morning as my affirmation.
Yeah, it was great.
That was great. Okay, now the bar is high for me to introduce Alex. Well, Alex Terranova, my husband, father to Callie and Tucker. Alex is an enigma of a human. He is like a strong, direct, weightlifting, masculine dude who meditates every morning and has more crystals and mala beads and just all the spiritual things than I even do. And who is sweet and playful and loving. And his journey really came from him realizing at a certain point, I want to say in his late 20s, he can correct me, that the way that he was living, which was really from this kind of ego, and I would say like self-protective place of needing to be kind of like cool and aloof and macho and yeah, just like kind of staying on the surface of life, working in restaurants and bartending and all of that, was deeply unfulfilling, and kind of had a wake up call and a conversation with his family where he just knew he needed to make a change and got on his own path of transformation and personal development, and calls himself he used to say recovering. I would like to say recovered asshole. I think the way yeah, just like the way he showed up and treated people is like so not who he is at his heart, at his essence. And so now, having healed a lot of that and being just so much more authentically, open-heartedly expressed and able to really be a leader in the world from that place, he gets to guide his clients in his coaching practice and his men's retreats in really like discovering for themselves what it means to be a leader, how to create fulfillment, how to have success and deep relationships and love and community and the things that make it all worth it at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's a great introduction, and I can vouch for Alex too. I've known him for several years now. We've exchanged podcast interviews. I've been to one of his men's retreats, and I can honestly and sincerely say that he is a high quality man. And we need more of those men out there. So thank you for the work you do, and thank you for the work you do, Evin.
Yeah.
So there was the one spicy piece. Anything that you could add about Alex that was something unique that someone may not know that may have been a key component to that wake-up call or the conviction to guide men in being more complete, whole men?
I'm trying to think if there's like a moment or anything that stands out. Well, I'll say one wake-up call, and then I'll let Alex chime in because I think I can like see behind his eyes he has something more. I think at a certain point he also noticed that he was somewhat blocked in his relationships with men. Like that the way that he related to men, and I think this is common actually in like how men are conditioned, was kind of scoping out like, is a man either a threat to me, right? Do I need to like kind of try to one up him or like keep him at arm's length because there's some things about him that make me feel insecure? Or on the flip side, right? Like, can I feel better than this man? And so also there's like it's not worth investing in the relationship, or kind of finding what's wrong, right? Again, I think from self-protection. And so I know that he, for many years, even before we met, had so many, and still does, so many deep friendships with women, like really incredible female friends who he could open up to and who supported each other. And then I think his bro friendships were more surface level. There was like a disconnect in how to be like how to have emotional intimacy with other men, how to be authentic, how to let yourself be vulnerable with each other, how to have that depth. And so that's been a big thing that I've watched him shift, like in him kind of realizing what he was missing out on there, and how much men actually need each other, to rise up and become the men that they want to be. So as he's transformed that, and now it's so beautiful to look at all of the deep friendships and brotherhood he has in his life. And yeah, I'm so proud of him inviting other men into that work.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And one of the things, so we met you guys for, I guess, brunch. How long was it? A year ago?
No, I think the summer, whenever it was, a few months back.
And one of the things that we fell in love with was the story of how you guys met, which is unique. I don't really think I've heard it before.
Well, I remember asking Evin how you guys met, and she said, "Well, I won the contest." And she started talking. I'm like, wait, stop. I think John needs to hear this
And
because
Alex was like, "You haven't heard this story?" I was like, "No, I've never heard this story."
I'm like, I've never heard anyone start off by saying I won the contest without it being, stars from a reality TV show.
Yeah.
And so as soon as we started to hear the story, I'm like, oh my gosh, make a great podcast interview. We've got to tell this. I want to, because I also wanted us to hear it again, selfishly, because it was so fun, but there were so many unique layers to it. So, based on your introduction of Alex, I'm wondering if, that piece that many men might be able to relate to is this recovering asshole part, which maybe wasn't an asshole, but maybe not knowing how to be intimate, how to look for what quality components are in a relationship, and maybe where their blind spots are, and being able to see that, which is part of what Alex enlisted. So maybe start with that piece.
Well, I think too, like I was an asshole, and I think of this as like I wasn't a bad person. I think there's a clear difference. Like an asshole, a jerk, like just kind of like not nice, rude, like what it really was, I was struggling to be with myself. The thoughts in my head, the judgments about myself, how I wasn't good enough, how I was never, succeeding. I wasn't good enough at the sports I played. I wasn't good enough. My body wasn't as good as that guy's over there. I wasn't as smart as those kids over there, right? It was always, and even if I did, even if I was the best at something, there's only a moment before you find someone who's better, right? So I was always playing a game with myself, and I didn't know this, right? This wasn't like consciously. I was playing a game with myself where I'd always lose somehow. It was like the end zone just kept moving further away no matter how close I got. So that negativity in my own brain about myself and the harshness I was being with myself, that can only go two ways, right? You're either spiraling to the bottom and you're gonna take your own life or be very, very suicidal or depressed, which I wasn't, or you're gonna spew it out on everyone else, right? Because it's got to go somewhere.
Right.
And for whatever reason, I've been, lucky to be a very high functioning, um, there's not a real word, but somebody who, I really struggle to be me. Like it's hard for me to be with myself and but high functioning in the sense that nobody else knows it. I'm not walking around like sad or mopey. I'm successful in the things I do, but inside it's like I'm just torturing myself. And that used to just like get all over everyone. Um, and realizing, oh my God, I'm not happy. I remember when my girlfriend at the time said, "You're not happy." And it was like, happy? Like what? Like what? It was like foreign, the idea that like I knew what happiness felt like because I'd get drunk and I'd feel happy, right? I'd get laid and I'd feel happy, but I didn't actually know what happiness felt like just like with myself.
Right.
And that sent me, so I think that's important because I think there's so many people out there that we think are not nice or they're jerks or they're catty or whatever, and like they're struggling with something inside that they just don't know where to put it, and so it
Right.
gets all over everyone else. um did you want to add something?
Well, I was just gonna say to then like follow that thread. By the time we got closer to when Alex started the dating contest, I think he had done a lot of work to heal a lot of that and just to be aware and be more
Years.
responsible, right, with how he was showing up. So I would say by the time you created the dating contest, which we'll explain in a moment, you weren't in asshole mode, but I think you were on autopilot mode by then in
Well,
dating, right?
yeah, I think the thing that happens, like I think we all, if we date for long enough, like if we date for long enough and however we do, anything becomes autopilot. Like, but I think I had done a really good job of cleaning up kind of myself. I did a lot of good work, but I didn't know how to then translate that into the world fully. So I was still dating the same type of women I was dating before. I was just now a really good guy and behaving different, but the women were the same because I had been conditioned to like pick. I think this is an important point for people that are single. We're conditioned to pick who we pick. We're like, we talk about it like that's my type, like it's some great thing, but it's actually not. It's not. It's conditioning. your environment, your culture, your society has you look at a certain type of person and go, I like that. And that's like, it's not natural. You weren't born like that. You got conditioned to be like that. And that's not just the way they look, but in the way they behave. How, I could find a woman who had like a lot of unresolved trauma, and then I could be her hero and try to save her. And that made me feel good about myself. And we do these dances. And so to speed this up, I finally had this realization that like, oh my God, I'm doing the same thing over and over again in relationships. And I don't know how to break this pattern. I'm like so in the pattern, I don't know how to break it. And I said to my cousin one day while drinking at a bar, we were like joking and making fun of each other's relationship stories. I think I have just like a bad picker. I shouldn't pick who I date. And my cousin was like, "Great, I'll pick who you date." Like she was like, "That's fun. I'll do that." And this joke within 24 hours very quickly unraveled to what if a group of my friends picked who I went out on dates with, but ultimately, like they picked who I went on a trip to Tulum with for a wedding. And it
Can
wasn't,
I
I have,
pause you there
yeah,
in this
yeah,
story just for a
yeah.
moment? Because I want to jump into that, but I also want to hear a little bit of what was Evan's dating experience before we get into the contest, really to put on the other side, where were you at in your conditioning and your patterns in your healing journey as it related to relationships?
Were you a recovering asshole also?
I was
Is that
not.
just a type for you guys?
Never an asshole. I was definitely a recovering, let's see, recovering addict of hot and emotionally unavailable men. That was my addiction.
Yeah, that's a type. Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's a type for sure. Yeah, I had also done a lot of work over the years, and of course, that's what led me into supporting other women in dating also, is that was an area of my own life that I felt just kind of frustrated and stuck. I have loved love since I was a little kid, like doodling every boy's name on my trapper keeper and all of that.
Trapper keeper.
Yeah, to date myself. And yeah, and I just like thought I would be married and have babies and all that by my late 20s. And I went through a big breakup in my mid 20s with the man I thought I was going to marry. And that, sent me on many years of dating and just like so wanting to find my person and finding myself in some patterns of yeah, really like choosing and investing in men who were wonderful in many ways and who really ultimately could not fully meet me or fully lean in and choose in to partnership at the level that I wanted. And so yeah, I did a lot of work to look at, why is it that I was attracting that and choosing that, and where did I not feel fully worthy of devotion, commitment, being met by a partner.
Who is
And
also seemingly what you were naming there as someone who is on the same kind of growth path of me.
yeah,
Through awareness, mindfulness, self-reflection, insight, healing. I mean, that definitely is qualities that both of you were on this independent journey that maybe not have named it at the moment, but clearly it has something that has worked for you guys, is that background.
Yeah, it's so true. It's I think it's reflective not only of the work that we'd each done individually, but I think being on this path, it really influences how you see the world, how you engage with the world, right? How we just create our lives on purpose. And it's really hard to be in partnership with someone who sees the world and their role in their life completely differently, right? I remember my last significant committed relationship before Alex was with a wonderful man who had no belief in spirituality or like anything other than science, what we can like feel, touch, prove. And I remember trying to be like, okay, this can work. We can have differences, we can respect each other. And yeah, ultimately that was one of, just one factor, but it's so important to me to be able to explore all these different facets of life that are so meaningful to me with a partner, and to feel like it's more than just that we can respect each other. We can actually go there together. We can keep expanding together in all these different realms.
And I think that something is really unique and something so valuable about our relationship is we've done the same thing, and the levels of depths you can go with someone who is open to looking through other lenses and looking to growing in different ways and growing together. It's so rich, but not something you can really put like on a dating app profile.
I
Of,
think you
Right.
can. I think I'm looking
Well-
for someone with a growth mindset specifically around relationship skills.
right,
It's critical.
but it is. And the average man is not going to be like, woohoo, that's hot, like women
But you're
would.
not looking, I think most
Right.
women are not looking for the average man.
I know. I'm saying it's just not as common. It's just,
I also
Yeah.
think, yeah, I also think a lot of people relate to themselves as growth minded, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's embodied in and practiced and lived in the way
Yeah.
that, right? It's like that means something different to each of us.
well, and I love the stat you always share about self-awareness.
Oh, yeah. Tasha Eurich has some research that shows that 95% of us will happily report being highly self-aware, but research shows it's about 12 to 15% of us, which is a big
Right.
problem.
So even if they're responding on that dating app saying, yeah, I'm fully into that, it might not be embodied,
Yeah.
was my point. Okay, so go
Right.
ahead.
Right. It's like I listened to a podcast one time by someone who talks about growth.
I read a book. I'm on it.
Right, I'm on it, totally. Yeah, so fast forward to the season I was in when I heard of this contest created by this random man, Alex. I was single. I mean, I had been single for a few years and dating and exploring different connections, but ultimately single for a few years because I was at a point where I was like, we are not settling. We are not investing in something that just isn't it. Like I'm so committed to my big vision of partnership and it's time. And so it's going to take the time it's going to take, but I'm not choosing anything less. And I noticed that I was in just some like stale dating energy with the apps. I was swiping away and going on some first date, kind of a little autopilot, similar. And so I had taken the apps off the table for myself, and I had set an intention that summer to meet people in surprising and adventurous ways. That was my intention for myself. And sure enough, that opened up a lot of possibility. Like I was meeting people in places I never thought I would. I was being bolder in how I was showing up and putting myself out there, right? I was stretching my comfort zone more. And so when a good friend of mine called me and said, hey, I just interviewed my friend Alex on my podcast. You don't know him yet, but he's a friend of mine. He's created this dating contest. A group of his friends are going to choose a woman to go to Tulum with him. And I really think you should apply. I really see potentially an incredible fit between you two. I was like, well, shit, I have to say yes. I just set this intention to meet people in surprising adventurous ways. And it doesn't get much more adventurous than applying a made
I
up
love the
dating
intention that you
contest.
set, because that does wake you up, right? Like you've mentioned being mindless or on autopilot. You're no longer on autopilot when you make that intention.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, it's like all these possibilities open up beyond kind of the narrow, path that we're just used to walking down.
So back to your bar night with your cousin.
Yeah. So the opposite, like instead of me creating an intention on how I was going to do it, mine was action. Mine is always like creative action always makes magic happen for me. I just see it like all over. And I think this applies to anyone for anything. You want something to shift, don't like take some creative action. And don't be attached to a result, but see what happens, see what unfolds. And this joke of, hey, my friends will pick who I takes to Tulum for this wedding. So I had 2 tickets to a wedding. It was right after COVID, so the wedding had been canceled and postponed and then rescheduled. I had the tickets. So I had the plane tickets. I had the hotel. Like everything was just waiting. And I'd been in a relationship when that was all booked. So now I was not in a relationship like a year later, and I had this space to fill. And I didn't think I was going to find my wife. I was hoping it wasn't let's just send some random woman with him to Tulum. It was like, we called it the Tulum dating experiment, because the idea was what would happen if I fully surrendered and turned over my dating life to a group of my friends who were bringing their intentionality to it. This was not a group of my buddies who were looking for, like just who's the hot girl he's gonna sleep with. This was like 5 different types of people were like who would be the best match for him, and possibly could create a relationship. And then the creativity sort of we just kept unfolding. It just kept like unfolding as we went. So first it was I threw it up on social media and people really responded to it. Right. So what I mean by that is people were writing in the comments, I'll go, I nominate, I want to go, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, that was a joke. I didn't actually think people were gonna like be
What was
raising.
what was the runway time from when you first put it up to when the actual wedding in Tulum was going to be that you were going to be attending?
I think the first like post I ever made about it was like July of like 2021, and the wedding was October of 2021.
Okay, so you had a good amount of time. It wasn't like you were just going to get some shoddy responses and
No, and look, it was just a post with like a picture of the hotel. Like I have 2 tickets to Tulum. Who wants to go? It was very like not thought out and thrown out there. But then the amount of responses that came back was so overwhelming that it went, oh, wait, we need like a system. There were literally people tagging, like someone like you, George, would be like, Alex is great. I know him. And you'd tag 3 of your girlfriends, right? That's
right.
the kind of thing that was happening. And we were like, oh, this isn't just going to work to be like this very casual thing. So I quickly went on my website and added an extra tab with a page and created an application. And I don't remember if it showed on the website or we just had to send the link, if it was hidden or not, but we created this application and we just started directing people that wanted to apply to this. And it went like viral, not millions of people viral, but like, yeah, I remember at the time I looked at my page count and the amount of people who had been to my website was like 10,000 times more than had ever been there. Right. So even people that are just like, what is this guy doing? We're checking it out.
What kind of things were on the application?
So
And did you come up with that, or did your entourage of support help you come up with that application?
So the process of all of it there was a lot of work that they weren't gonna, they all, had jobs and things. So I sort of like project managed it. And they made all the decisions though about like what women like moved forward or, which ones they liked and didn't. I think I created the application and I think I sent them all the questions and was like, do you approve? And I think they said, take 4 off and add this. And so it was a collaboration. But the questions were things like, there were some generic things like, do you have a passport? Right? Like, can some how you're over 18, you have a passport, right? Like some just like generic. I think we even had like, do you drink? At the time,
Mm-hmm.
I was a big tequila mezcal drinker, and I liked sitting with someone and having a drink. And it wasn't a deal breaker, but it was kind of like I want to be able to
We're not
have
going
that.
to align. Yeah.
Yeah, if somebody was like, I absolutely don't drink. Now, it's funny now we barely drink at
Yeah,
all, but
we
then
don't
it
drink.
mattered. Um, so there were questions like that. There was questions like fun questions like, hey, if we dumped out your bag or your purse, what would we find inside it on a regular basis? Um, there were things like, what are you looking for in a partner? Maybe like, why haven't you found what you're looking for? Or if this went well, what are your intent? What would you hope that it would turn into? Why do your relationships not work? There were things that had people, and then some of it was just like, are you married? Have you been married? Do you have kids? Like very generic, generic
Basic
things.
intake
Yeah. And the
questions.
first application was probably something that you could have filled out in like 10, 15 minutes. Like it wasn't a big deal. We were getting so many responses that we created like a second layer application that was more of a deep dive into what people were really wanting and looking for in relationship. Um, and then that was the one that the group really used to kind of decide which women they should actually start having conversations with to like really meet and like interview basically.
Well, and then so your group of friends interviewed the first round of women, correct?
So they took it was like 115 or 123, somewhere it was like that, like down. They immediately just through the applications were like, okay, we got it to like 30. They were like these 30 could be real potential options. And then they went through the 30 and brought the 30 down to basically 10.
And you weren't allowed any access to at that point,
I
correct?
could see it all. I was like looking, I was at that point, it was like a race that I had. Like I was like, I'm rooting for number five. You know, but this was really based on like cool application and I saw their picture. But I had no say. They were ranking them and just telling me, and then they reached out to the 10 women and basically set up interviews, felt like phone or Zoom interviews. And one of the things that we created together, and again, each of these stages got made up as we were like walking, they weren't planned. So then we're like, oh, well, if we're going to interview the women, if that stage goes well, let's flip it and we had my kind of committee tell the women if to find like somebody from their life to interview me next. So we flipped it on its head, right? And now I was in the hot seat being interviewed by all these people's, friends and family or whatnot.
I really appreciated that because my concern and something I asked on my interview with one of his friends was like, okay, is this just about all these women trying to like get this guy, right? And he's the end all be all here, and it's about like what is Alex looking for? Or is this really a mutually supportive experiment, right? That's about two people potentially finding each other and really exploring compatibility and what they're both looking for. And that became very clear to me that there was so much intentionality and heart in this. And yeah, being able to have I think at that point there were maybe 7 of us or something, 7 women, something like that, who were still in the game. And yeah, I remember asking if I could have 2. It's like I have 2 friends who are going to interview him. We're going to tag team this. And women who I really trusted and had different perspectives, but knew me really well. One who'd known me since high school, 20 years, one who was a close friend of the last few years, more in the same work with me. And they interviewed Alex and asked him the hard-hitting questions. And
were your friends and family, as you were getting to this point, Evan, supportive of this as a process? Like, what was the general sentiment of being one of the quote contestants, for lack of a better word? What did your friends and family think at the beginning? And then did their opinion shift over time as the more you got into it?
Most were really supportive. Most of my friends and family at that point just so trusted me and the way that I was intentionally and bravely living my life. And I think we're inspired also that I would just put myself out there for something like this, also unattached to the outcome, but just knowing that I was going to learn from it, get to know myself better from it, have an adventure with it, however it went. And best case, which thankfully is how it turned out, right? I didn't it.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler. And yeah, there were also a couple of friends who were really skeptical and judgmental of it. And I think it's so, listen, like the things we have judgments about it's so reflective, right? Of like how our own values and how we live. And so, yeah, I had a couple of friends who just really didn't understand, who wouldn't have put themselves out there for something like this, right? Whether it was, I had a friend who's married to her college sweetheart and never had to explore adult dating and looking for a partner in this kind of intentional way. And another friend who's just really mistrustful of men in general. And yeah, I think they both had some judgment and some fear that they projected onto me. And that was actually such a practice for me as a recovering people pleaser. That's my other recovering addiction. To not take that on and to not need, I remember at first really trying to get them to understand and like needing every single person in my life to get it and be on my side and to have that validation, right? And at a certain point, something just clicked where I was like, oh, I just don't need to take on everyone's opinion and thoughts. And I trust myself. And yeah, that was really freeing.
Oh my gosh, it's just like Love is Blind.
Right.
I've gotten
Well,
John
at least
hooked.
that part.
I've gotten John hooked into Love is Blind for the first time. I don't know that he's hooked, but he's watching with me.
Yeah. Speaking of
Isn't
rooting
it
for
so
couples.
satisfying to watch together? Let's
Yes.
we all need to get Alex on this train after this call.
Yes.
Have a talk about it. Yeah, it's a big part, like making sure that you have people in your life who are giving you honest reflections and supporting you, which my community really does, but also who trust you, right? And whose values align. And again, who
Right.
like the way that they see the world and show up align with yours, or else it's not super helpful to look for.
Were you in any point of the process feeling really in competition with other people? How did you manage your own? I mean, this is my projection question, my own anxiety of, am I good enough? How am I going to compare, more of an attachment to the outcome sort
Yeah.
of thought or emotional management process?
Thankfully, a couple of things were really helpful. One is that the way it was set up, unlike living in the bachelor mansion, right? I had no awareness of who else was in it. There was no way for me to compare myself, thankfully, because I would have, right? If I had been able to see the women and see what they've accomplished and see whatever, it would have been challenging for me not to compare myself. I also, one thing is that I think, again, because of the work that I had done around just being so clear on what I'm looking for in partnership, I had come to this place, and I remember kind of repeating this to myself throughout the process of I'm only interested in finding my person, and my person is also someone who's going to fully choose me. So while it would have been disappointing, well, I'll back up for a second. Until kind of close to the end, I didn't have that much of a sense of Alex. So I also, if I were to get attached, it would have just been to the fantasy of this. And that, I think, is an important distinction and a helpful practice, is being like, hold on, am I fantasizing about an idea of a person? Which is easy to do, right? Even on a dating app or
Sure.
after a first date. Like, we make up a whole story about who they are and what our life would be like. And that's just a fantasy, right? It's hard to grasp onto that, or like, what's the reality of this present moment? And most of the time along the process, the reality of the present moment was, I'm participating in this experience for myself. I'm here to practice showing up really authentically. Like, that was a decision I made, right? I am not going to try to answer questions in the way that I think he would want or his friends would think he would, right? Like, I'm not trying to win anything here. Because if I do that and then I do win, I've actually kind of lost, right? I've presented a version of myself that's not authentic, and that's not going to be the foundation of the type of partnership I want.
Well, and I would say that's one of the bonuses of having experience dating, is that you get to this point where you stop the impression management and you're like, I'm just going to go with radical honesty here.
Yeah.
Let's see how that works.
Yeah.
Because when that works, as you said, you got the best chance of finding your person.
Right.
I was also thinking, as you were talking about that, this person was also looking for their right person. And it makes me think of a quote that changed my life, that really shifted, that I think really the universe was supporting in me finding John, or John finding me, which is the Rumi quote, "What you seek is seeking you." And that was a huge mindset shift in my dating of, I'm not looking for someone, but someone's also looking for me. And softening into that belief changed everything for me. And then I met him 10 days later.
Wow.
But that speaks to exactly what you were saying of, oh, I'm not here to win. I'm, someone also was looking for their absolute right person. And if it's me, it'll be meant to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And that supported me so much, to the point where in the last couple of weeks of the contest are when Alex and I started connecting. We had a FaceTime call, which led to a FaceTime call almost every night, connecting, having these deep conversations, getting to know each other. And that's when I really started to feel like, oh, there is something here, and I really want to keep exploring this, right? I would love for it to be us at the end, to get to see what we could create together.
So Alex, where were you in this point now as it's getting closer down to some of these last few people, that process on your end?
I was having too much fun from an ego perspective. Uh, but I was
Love it.
also struggling a lot because I didn't know how this was going to go. It was really hard to surrender. What if they picked somebody I didn't actually like that they felt like was good for me?
Did you
Um,
feel attached to having to go to Tulum with the person they picked?
there was a part of me that like trusted that it would work out. Either that we wouldn't, the person, like if they pick somebody, we would be like mutually like, we don't want, this isn't going to work. Or that it would, and we would go. I didn't really see a future in which some person who didn't want to go with me and I didn't want to go with them, we would just go
Okay.
together. Right. It wasn't like this was going to be forced on us. But I did have integrity around like, like wanting to do what I said I was going to do. It wasn't just like, well, if I don't like the person you pick, I'm not going to do it. Right. It was like, I'm going to give it the best my best shot. But at the same time, I was when I it was interesting because when I chose to do this and I sort of surrendered, the universe was like, "Oh, really? You're gonna let this is you want to play this game? Okay." And it like opened the heavens of women. And I would like walk out my door and bump into a beautiful woman. I would like be sitting in a bar and a woman would tap me on the shoulder and be like, "Hi, is someone sitting here?" And I'm like, this happens in life, but not at the frequency that it was happening. It was and at the time I was seeing a therapist, and I remember saying to the therapist, like, I'm like meeting all these women in real life. I'm sort of dating two women in real life. They know about the contest. They don't want to apply to the contest. I don't know what to do. Like I'm just and my therapist said to me, first of all, my therapist loved that I was doing this. She thought it was like such a good exercise. But the thing that she reflected to me was um, the thing that you're doing in real life outside of this contest is your back door. And she asked me like, what's your relationship to having back doors? And I was like, it was my whole life before
Mm.
I really worked on myself. And she's like, well, you're doing it right now.
Mm.
And it was a big like, ooh, what a reflection. And so the thing I committed to her was I would go to the women that I was seeing, casually seeing, and basically say, like, I'm committed to this thing. If you wanna come to Tulum with me or have this, you gotta play this, you gotta apply to this game. And if you don't, that's totally fine. But like we're not gonna date anymore. It's just I'm like going all of it. And neither one of the women wanted to do that, which was fine. Um, but that moment of going all in, I think really sort of tipped the scale. Um, and then I was just, yeah, it was. I knew I liked Evan. Like I knew in talking to her, I liked her. But I was talking to like, some of the other women. I kind of liked them. There was a lot of like, you think of like The Bachelor, right? Or these shows. It's so easy to like multiple people, right? It's all so new. You only are getting like one piece of the pie. You're not having any conflict, which is really when you see what's possible or not. Um, so that was challenging because I'm like, oh, I really like her. I like her. I think I like her. I don't, it was like, it was challenging to navigate that. It was actually an exercise for me to keep kind of practicing surrender, practicing trust, trying to check where my ego was getting in there, trying to check where my old patterns were like, do I really like that one or is that one just fit the archetype of what I'm used to? Um, those kind of things. Yeah, it was in itself, it was a transformational process.
Well, I love what you're both naming. And what one of the things I'm hearing most is the power of not just self reflection, but really challenging our narrative and our attachment to our habits under the guise of I'm being authentic, I'm being present. And that to me sounds like one of your biggest transformations was that continual questioning of this presence, this pattern. I love that your therapist challenged you on that and your realization, oh shit, I'm actually doing the thing that is a habit. I didn't even see it in that lens, but then having the courage and the conviction to stick with the intention.
Mhm.
We say these things that we like relate to being so true. I'm like this. This is like who I authentically am. Like we walk around and we like carry these flags of identity. And authenticity is nonsense. It's like water. It's the most fluid, it is the most fluid thing that exists in the sense of as human beings, we can be whatever we want to be at any given moment. And so it's not to say that like some people really don't like when I challenge that authentic. Who I am authentically right now is the truth. And tomorrow I could be authentically something else. And most people actually are just so dug in on their position of who they are that they're willing to die on that hill even if it doesn't work for them. And and I think like relationships test that, more than anything. And if we really are willing to let our partner expand who we are, the our who we are authentically just can just can grow to infinity.
We could have a whole other conversation just on that.
Yeah.
I love what you named there, but for sake of time, let's get to how you got to the end of the contest and how you guys have integrated ever since.
Yeah. So let's see, we were having all of those nights of FaceTiming and connecting, and
At that point, just for context, you had there were 3 people at this point at that
The,
stage.
the final, it was like there was like a final 3 people that
Okay.
I was gonna go on 3 dates with, like Thursday night, a Friday night, and a Saturday night, like
In real life
in
for
real
the
life.
first
Yeah.
time.
One
Okay.
one day, 3 people in a row. Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. And so, and that again was where, I knew that, right? I knew like what point we were at. And that's when I was really saying to myself, like, this is my person or it's not. No one else involved has anything to do with that, right? If he ends up with someone else, it's not because I should have done something differently and I lost out. It's because then that's their journey and he's not my person, right? And I was hopeful. Like I was really hopeful at that point. And yeah, we had our in-person date. We met, I was living in LA at the time. Alex was living in San Diego. So we drove halfway and met for a date in Laguna Beach and spent 8 hours together, talking, laughing, kissing, just like pretty blown away by how much our virtual connection translated right away to being together physically in person, which I was nervous about. Sometimes it's scary when you've built up a lot of emotional intimacy with someone and you don't know what they smell like, right? What they're like, how they walk, just like those things, those 3D,
Yeah, if there's too many holes in their jeans, or they have like too many chains and jewelry on and
Or
tattoos.
where the holes in their jeans are.
Yeah.
Yeah, where they are, right. Yeah, that's true. I was a bit taken aback at first by all of his jewelry and ripped jeans, and then I got past that in 2 minutes. And yeah, we just talked so openly on that date about how special and powerful and easy our connection felt. And Alex texted his, am I allowed to say this part? I'm going to.
Yeah. We're not bound. There's no like production company that's like
We didn't sign an NDA. Alex texted his committee of friends, his judges, while we were still together on our date, saying it's Evin, and they had the final say, right? But he was like,
I said,
from my perspective, this is so
yeah, it was
clear.
like it's stupid if we don't pick Evin. It's just
And you were the third of those 3 in-person dates, right?
the first person got like cold feet, freaked out, canceled the day of.
Wasn't one person out of state even?
So there were 4, and there were 4 originally, and there was one person, the person out of state was like, I don't want to fly in, just like wasn't willing. She sort of had this like she was the youngest one, and she was like, I'm just not like that. I think it was just fun for her to like play the game, and then it got here, and she was like, this isn't. And then but the 3 who we had dates set up, the third kind of got cold feet, kind of freaked out, decided I don't want to do this. And then I went on a date with the woman the night before. And so Evin was the second, the 2 of 2. And And I shared with you all, like the date I went on with the other woman, it wasn't like a bad date. It was fine. Um, if this was just regular life, let's say I just had met her on an app, I might have gone like on a second date. It was sort of like I could, or yes, no. It wasn't a hell no or a hell yeah. It was like okay, let's maybe. But when we our date, I remember thinking like I could see a life with this person,
Mm.
right? I don't know that I'm not in love with them yet. I don't have that, but I could see a possibility of building a life with this person in 8 hours. And I don't think, and it wasn't like a fantasy. It wasn't like, which we all have that. This was a clear different, like the way this person interacts with me and talks to me and how we talk about things and talk about things we disagree upon. I was like, oh, this like math just makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah.
How soon was it from that first in real life date was the Tulum trip?
It was about 6 weeks later. So we had 6 weeks where we did a few visits back and forth between LA and San Diego to get to know each other a little bit more. And I remember telling him, well, we decided right away that we weren't going to see other people because we were like, we need to give this a real shot. We want to give this a real shot. And I remember telling him when he was ready that I wanted him to ask me to be his girlfriend. And so he did that. I think it was like the day before we went to
It was
Tulum.
like the night before. I had purposely like waited because I knew she was like hanging, waiting for it. Just like,
And yeah, we went to Tulum. We fell in love on that trip.
How long
And
were you there for?
about 2 weeks.
It's a long time to be with someone you only knew for 6 weeks.
yeah,
Sure is. Yeah. 24 hours a day. But it was easy.
yeah.
It
So
was,
yeah,
yeah, it was really pretty magical. And we had like a lot of real conversations too. It was magical, but it wasn't just like, oh, vacation, we'll keep it surface level, right? We really talked through things as they came up. I shared what I was nervous about going into the trip. And yeah, by the end of the trip, the last day, we were in the ocean together and we created a vision for our wedding in Tulum. And a year and a half later, we flew back to Tulum to get married.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Well, it's a hell of a story.
yeah. We're like, I mean, recording this, we're 12 days from our 2-year anniversary.
Aw.
Yeah.
Congratulations. So to bring it full circle before we wrap up, what were some of the biggest takeaways for you guys individually or relationally from this whole process?
Mm.
I mean, Evan, you said something about not needing to gain everyone's approval early on, which I think is
Mhm.
important.
Yeah, that's a huge one. And I would just say bravery is the word that comes to mind for me. Like it takes a lot of bravery to open to deep partnership and intimacy with another human. It takes a lot of bravery to fully put yourself out there, right? To let yourself be seen, to not wear those masks and try to be, who you think people want you to be to get chosen, right? To be kind of unapologetically yourself. It takes a lot of bravery to lean into something when it's so unknown and uncertain, right? There were absolutely moments as we got closer to the end when I did start really feeling my connection more deeply to Alex, where I was like, oh, I could just run away from this now and not risk being the one to get rejected, or right. And I just wasn't willing to let myself do that. I chose bravery in the name of love, in the name of what was possible, right? Seeing something all the way through. And yeah, I think that holds true almost 4 years later in partnership. Like it's, I was very comfortable being on my own when we met. Like I lived alone, happy with my own company. I mean, I wanted partnership, but there's just a way to stay in your own comfort zone, right? When you're doing life solo.
Well,
And
I 100% agree with you. I think it takes immense courage to lean into vulnerability and trust and love, partly because when you're radically transparent, when you're 100% yourself and you fall for someone and you open your heart to them, they know all about you. They know your triggers and you're just kind of trusting them to handle your heart gently.
yeah,
And then we
yeah,
have these urges to either pursue or avoid, run away. But
Mhm.
it's at some level, it's terrifying. I mean, I remember talking to Jory about that holy shit, this being truly in love is scary as hell.
Mhm.
He got really mad at me 3.5 weeks into dating. We were on a date night in San Francisco. And I remember he's like, I'm so mad at you. I'm like, why? He's like, this is scary as hell. Like I was just getting comfortable with casual dating. And now the depth that we connected over really quickly
Mm.
was terrifying. And it actually took 7 years into our 9-year relationship to truly even recognize where those old patterns of fear and anxiety and shutting down, came to a head. Before, I would say the past 2 years of our 9 years is the most authentic and depth and safe and trusting it's ever been. Because even when you think you're there, we still got stuck.
We had to deal with those attachment wounds.
Yeah. Well, all the things that, all those things I was saying about myself that I was struggling with, like those demons, basically, those all came up to sabotage from inside of me. So, right, instead of me being hard on myself, like when we fell in love, we came, or I don't know if it was like when we were dating, we were in the beginning, and she had won, and I was looking at her through a different lens. I was like trying to figure out what was wrong with her, like what was wrong or bad or why. And it wasn't from that. I didn't relate to it as like the fear of like, I wasn't really afraid of it working out, but it was like it was like that next level, right? Like the me who I had to be in the relationship I wanted to be in had to transform that, and that another level of like, I had to beat my demons one more time, and they were trying to mess this up for me. And so it just kept, that to me, when I look back, it's like whatever your issues are with yourself, the relationship is a magnifying glass for them.
100%.
And I really love that idea that there's some of these issues and their relational issues that we can only heal when in relationship. So I mean, it's funny, a lot of single people are out there reading books on relationship, and that's fine. But until the rubber hits the road, until you're actually in relationship, you can't practice getting out of some of these dynamics.
Right.
Yeah. But I think you can practice them with inside of other relationships, right? There's things you can work on with, your family. There's things you can work on with, your roommates or it's going to obviously be different when it's an
It's a different
intimate.
level of intimacy and different level of
Totally.
vulnerability.
But
And,
you can't, but I do think you can practice, right?
absolutely.
All relationships bring up our stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, because that very first line when I asked how you met, when Evan, you said, I won the contest. It's funny because, with John and I, there was no contest involved, but I still use the language of I won, like I got him, like, and I think it's funny because it's bringing up my high school self and his high school self are like completely opposite ends of the spectrum on every way possible. And so it feels like, the overweight, insecure, no real friend, no involvement, all the things that I was then compared to who he was, of top of his game on intellectual, academic, social, sports, all the things. It's like this, so much in life feels like a contest, right? So while you guys had a very specific set of structure that Alex, you and your friends unfolded with each step, it still feels like so much in life feels like a contest. Because I still feel like I won, but there was no team who picked me and I had to apply for. But isn't it still in so many ways the same that we went through of what level of authenticity, what our own individual journey was, and that step of the process, the individual work, the intentionality, the desire to have it be different is I think what makes these really authentic relationships, however you want to define authenticity. Alex, I'd love a conversation with you on that another time. But it's beautiful when we bring just presence and authenticity and the intention around how do I do it different?
Yeah.
How do I not end up in the same old patterns that we know didn't work? And I think that's what John and I really value with this work that we're doing of Love Isn't Enough, because we recognize kind of what you were saying. And also, Alex, like I could have, dated a lot of people, but what is the secret sauce that makes the deep relationship? Because I could love someone, but it not work out. What are all the other things that are important to heal, to work through, to name, to be aware of, or how to repair, how to heal, how to be truly honest or really vulnerable. That's what you guys got to work through. So I know we've got to wrap up. How can you guys are doing, amazing individual work. How can people find you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, Instagram, I would say, is a wonderful place to connect. Evin Rose. That's where I'm accessible to connect and chat about all things dating, love, and as Alex mentioned, this new adult musical theater venture. Just always
And spell
happy
your
to.
first name for us, Evin, would you? Because it's unusual as far as I know.
Sure, it's Evin,
Thank you.
Evin Rose. Yeah.
And Inspirational Alex on Instagram, or the thing I would have people check out is the Alchemy of Men retreat. That is the thing I'm really excited, right? That's the thing that's my new contest, but it's there's no prizes or winning. But we're doing some really cool work that John spoke about with, I think, specifically for men, you can only have the depth of what you want to the degree in which you'll create connection or intimacy with other men. And I say that because men with each other are kind of like final boss. We are the hardest on each other and with each other. And so if I can create connection, intimacy, love, safety with another man, I can do it and with anyone, anywhere in the world. And it's so many men are going and doing it with women, and then they go and they can't do it anywhere else because women are safe. But if you do it with another man, it will just spill out into your whole life. And the Alchemy of Men retreat is, I think, just a really cool way that men are finding fulfillment in all different areas of their life. And I'm really excited about that.
Well, you guys are doing amazing work. I've seen you now from afar online, and so I can speak to what you're presenting, and what you're inviting in is ideally what is coming back to you. And we're just happy to have you here and to have spent some time with you in real life. That was so fun. So thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story. And to the listener, if this is inspirational to you and you know someone who would value hearing it, please send it along, give a like, a rating, a review. We would be so appreciative. And yeah, we hope to see you guys in real life soon.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, take care and be well.